Republicans are standing in the way of urgently needed action to take on the real-world effects of climate change, even after the destruction wrought by Hurricane Ida. And at the same time, they're also staging a stunning and brazen attack on Roe v. Wade with the help of conservatives on the Supreme Court. For more on this, it's time for a closer look. Well, last week was a real bad news parade, and we were off, which means I didn't have the catharsis of the show to vent all my outrage. Making matters worse, I spent the week at my least favorite place on earth, the beach, where not only was I hot and sandy, but my kids were giving me hell because I didn't bring the right plastic shovels they liked. And I'm all like, what's wrong with this shovel? And they said, we like the green ones. And I said, well, I like staying inside and doing the New York Times spelling bee, so we don't always get what we want. And then they said, you're stupid. And I said, stupid? Actually, 3 out of 7 days, I'm a genius. And when I'm not, it's because of some dumbass, not a word pangram like jouncing. Anyway, these days, you don't have to look very far for bad news. Here in New York City, the destruction from Hurricane Ida was so bad, there were practically rivers pouring into people's homes and cars floating in 5 feet of water. The flooding was so bad, the subway looked like a whitewater rapid. I was waiting for an F train, and instead, an MTA canoe pulled up. And even that had a guy with a bike taking up space. It's undeniable, as it has been for a long time, that climate change is intensifying. These storms and having deadly real-world impacts right now, as we can see in front of us with our own eyes. Much of the West has been on fire this summer. Wildfire smoke has drifted all the way across the country and made the air toxic on the East Coast. And New York City just had to declare its first ever flash flood emergency. It's getting so bad that Pizza Rat has taken up water ballet. And I just hope, that he waited a half hour after eating. He looks great. Because he ate a lot of pizza and he didn't look great, but now he's swimming. He looks great. And yet, as they were airing a press conference with local officials discussing storm damage, the supposed news side of Fox News cut away and dismissed any discussion of climate change as, quote, political.
Because of climate change and these record storms that were once in 500 years, I'm told. Now that we've got to look at them to be storms that come in a regular manner, more intense as indicated. And so I spoke to Speaker Pelosi to make sure that we work very closely with Senator Schumer, so there's no separation between the House and the Senate, and I think all of the members of the United States Congress, and bringing the resources here to the city of New York. Let me thank the mayor and the governor for their working on this instantaneously.
Now, we know happened to be here. It's turned political quite quickly. It didn't take long to put the focus on quote-unquote climate change.
That's Fox quote-unquote news. We're way past the quote-unquote part of climate change. Americans are dealing with unprecedented flooding and deadly wildfires intensified by climate change, and you guys sound like parents trying to understand TikTok. My kids keep filming themselves singing sea shanties in their bedroom. I guess they're trying to go quote-unquote viral. But it's not just these anti-science reactionaries we have to contend with. There are also the so-called moderate Democrats standing in the way of major climate legislation, like West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin, who recently announced that he won't support the Democrats' $3.5 trillion spending bill that contains, among other things, significant investments in climate infrastructure.
Moderate Democrat Senator Joe Manchin is urging fellow Democrats to hit the pause button on that $3.5 trillion spending bill, saying there are more urgent priorities.
Manchin in the past has already raised concerns about the price tag, but now he is raising concerns about the timing, and that could throw the wrench in this process and could upend efforts to pass this, as well as a separate $1.2 trillion infrastructure plan. Now, just moments ago, he wrote in an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, instead of rushing to spend trillions on new government programs and additional stimulus funding, Congress should hit a strategic pause.
First of all, what would a pause look like on Capitol Hill, a place where it takes longer to pass a single piece of legislation than it takes to get a third season of Succession? And don't get me wrong, I cannot wait for a new season of Succession. I just worry when Logan Roy has more time to scheme. Dad? Second, you want to pause on legislation that would, among other things, expand health care amid a once-in-a-century pandemic, invest in job-creating infrastructure amid an unemployment crisis, and address climate change amid unprecedented floods and fires? You really think now is the time for a pause? You're like the guy in the zombie movie who thinks everyone should stop running toward the military base and instead just hide out in the shed. Guys, I know zombies. They're not going to come into the shed. Now, which one of you is shuffling and moaning? Oh, no! I'm sorry, you don't get to take a pause when the stakes are this high. Although I guess you don't have to worry about rising sea levels when your house is a boat.
Your profile of Manchin, it's got a lot of really interesting details, not the least of which is that the senator lives on the Potomac River in a houseboat named after a John Denver lyric.
Back in March, Ron Klain, the chief of staff of the White House, went to dinner with Joe Manchin. One thing I discovered during the reporting, went to visit him on that houseboat. They had dinner, and during the dinner, President Biden called and said, when are you inviting me out there?
Why does a senator have a houseboat? Houseboats are for cops who play by their own rules and drink whiskey from the bottle while looking at a framed photo of their ex-wife. Oh, sure, she's with that fancy lawyer now, but I'll bet she still thinks about you all the time. God, you guys sure had some good times. Oh, you fought like cats and dogs, but damn it, she could always find the pangram. You jounced my heart, Sheila! Also, Lindsey Graham was reportedly on the boat before he was diagnosed with COVID. And COVID aside, I can't think of anything less appealing than being trapped on a houseboat with Lindsey Graham. If you ever find my body floating in the East River, it was one or two things. Either the mom put a hit out on me for making too many jokes about the Mets, or I was on a houseboat with Lindsey Graham and swimming home was the only other option. Where are you going? I was just about to crack open a sarsaparilla and tell you about the time I was voted most polite at the Meemaw Awards. It's an award voted on and presented by my Meemaw. I usually sweep the major categories. Splash! The nation faces a series of massive existential crises brewing all at once, and we can't just sit around and wait for one guy on a houseboat to decide whether he wants to do something about it, whether it's the pandemic, climate change, democracy itself, or the rights-intensifying assault on Roe v. Wade, which took a horrifying turn last week when the Supreme Court, in the dead of night, upheld a heinous and truly diabolical law in Texas that bans abortions in brazen defiance of the Supreme Court precedent and the Constitution.
In the dead of night, they did it in the dead of night, 5 Republican Supreme Court justices, including 3 appointed by Donald Trump, a man who lost the popular vote in 2016 by nearly 3 million votes. They destroyed a woman's right to bodily autonomy and reproductive choice. First in the state of Texas, but who knows what's next. And they did it shortly before midnight. No big public announcement, with an order that is barely more than a page long.
That's right. They did it in the dead of the night and little more than a page. The same way a rich kid half-asses a freshman English paper because he knows he can't fail out. The font is size 16. The margins are 2 inches on each side. And at one point you claim Beowulf is about a wolf who lives by the bay on a houseboat like my dad, the senator. A-. Also, 3 of the 5 justices who wrote this odious and contemptuous ruling were appointed by a deeply unpopular one-term president who lost the popular vote by 3 million. They gutted a woman's right to choose in Texas and who knows where else next, despite never commanding majority support from the American people. And they don't give a shit because they're there for life. I mean, if that's how our government's going to work, then why not just have monarchy? At least then we'd have more messy tabloid drama and a Netflix show called The Gavel, where the men get played by actors who are way better looking than the actual royals. I mean, I'm sorry, but Prince Charles is being played by Dominic West? Who's your casting director? Prince Charles? Another option, of course, is putting fake ears on Ryan Gosling. Would that work? I mean, how much clearer can it get that our democracy is on fire and that we desperately need far-reaching changes like Supreme Court reform, eliminating the Electoral College, banning gerrymandering, and radically expanding voting rights? And just to underscore the point, the dissents from liberal justices were righteous in their fury and accurately captured just how reckless and grotesque this ruling was.
Sonia Sotomayor wrote a scathing dissent that reads this way: "The court's order is stunning, presented with an application to enjoin a flagrantly unconstitutional law engineered to prohibit women from exercising their constitutional rights and evade judicial scrutiny. A majority of justices have opted to bury their heads in the sand."
In effect, the Texas legislature has deputized the state's citizens as bounty hunters, offering them cash prizes for civilly prosecuting their neighbors' medical procedures.
I mean, they're obviously right. In fact, here's a clue as to how insane this Texas law is. You never want to see the words bounty hunters and cash prizes in a Supreme Court document. You want to see them in a 1987 Arnold Schwarzenegger movie called Money Hunt. The only way I can get the money for my wife's surgery is if I capture Delgado! Where are you hiding, Delgado? Are you on the houseboat?
You in the shed?
As the dissenters explained, the conservative majority on the Supreme Court basically just laid out a roadmap for how you can get around a constitutional right they don't like, in this case, a woman's right to bodily autonomy and reproductive choice. Just let citizens do the dirty work. It's insane. Something tells me those same 5 justices would never let such a law stand for, say, the Second Amendment. Imagine if a blue state like New York or California passed a law allowing any citizen to sue any other citizen for buying or intending to buy a gun. I mean, how would that even work? You'd have to go to someone's house and serve them with a lawsuit knowing they just bought a gun? I don't even like knocking on a neighbor's door when I'm friends with them. One time my kids chucked a Frisbee in a neighbor's yard. Instead of asking for it back, I just told them to learn a different sport. They're getting into baseball now, and even though it's only been a couple weeks, they're already better with men on base than the Yankees. That's right! The Yankees are the new Mets. Party's over, Wally. Oh, you had your fun, Wally. You had your fun, but the party's over, Wally. Seriously, though, the blue states should just go ahead and do it. Just write a Texas-style law, but for guns or supporting Trump online or whatever, just to with the conservatives on the court and expose their bad faith bullshit. I'm guessing Kavanaugh would have another 80s movie villain temper tantrum where he looks like the vice principal telling Michael J. Fox a wolf can't play basketball. Delgado! And of course, we were assured repeatedly by the same bad faith liars who always lie to justify their cowardice that this day would never come. It would never come. Like Maine Senator Susan Collins.
How can you be, or are you 100% certain, without a doubt, that Brett Kavanaugh will not overturn Roe v. Wade?
I do not believe that Brett Kavanaugh will overturn
His precedents
Roe
are overturned all the time.
They aren't overturned all the time.
More than...
And listen to the standards that he put forth in his conversation with me and also in the hearing. He says for a precedent, a long-established precedent like Roe to be overturned, it would have to have been grievously wrong and deeply inconsistent. He noted that Roe had been reaffirmed 19 years later by Planned Parenthood versus Casey, and that it was precedent on precedent. He said it should be extremely rare that it be overturned, and it should be an example.
So you have obviously full confidence.
I do.
If you ever see Susan Collins on your TV telling you it's going to be 80 degrees and sunny out, grab that umbrella. And among the many horrifying and heinous aspects of this bill is the fact that the Texas lawmakers behind it can't even defend its abject cruelty. Without making it clear, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. For example, the law doesn't even provide exceptions for rape or incest. When he was asked about that yesterday, Governor Greg Abbott claimed the bill supposedly allows 6 weeks to get an abortion, a response that was so vile and moronic it was left to Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to explain how basic biology works.
I find Governor Abbott's comments disgusting, and I think there's twofold. One, I don't know if he is familiar with a menstruating person's body. In fact, I do know that he's not familiar with a woman, with a female or menstruating person's body, because if he did, he would know that you don't have 6 weeks. Is that quote unquote 6 weeks? And I'm sorry we have to break it down on, break down Biology 101 on national television. But in case no one has informed him before in his life, 6 weeks pregnant means 2 weeks late for your period. And 2 weeks late on your period for any person with a menstrual cycle can happen if you're stressed, if your diet changes, or for really no reason at all. So you don't have 6 weeks. That's first things first.
It's a shame that it's even necessary for AOC to have to explain Biology 101 on national television, but she is very good at it. I wish she'd been my high school math teacher. Then maybe I know what the a fractal is. Even though I'm getting through life just fine, Mr. McKinley, your worst warnings vis-a-vis me and my lack of understanding of fractals have not come to pass. I'm thriving! Seriously, though, I get that these guys are just unrepentant misogynists who want to control women's bodies, but they can't even be bothered to pay attention for 5 minutes in health class. Do we also need members of Congress to go on TV and teach drivers ed? Does AOC need to get in a car with Ted Cruz and teach him how to parallel park? I'm guessing that dude's never done a K-turn in his life. Of course, Republicans only do R-turns, where they drive straight ahead, turn around in a circle, crash into a parked car, and then drive away and say it was a dude. Sometimes the graphics they're just not ready early enough in the day for me to see them. So you see them at the first time when you guys did. They did a hell of a job, though. They did a hell of a job. We're facing a series of simultaneous existential crises that are all brewing at the same time. There's a political movement in this country trying to halt any progress in tackling climate change while shredding women's reproductive rights. We need urgent, far-reaching reforms that enshrine a woman's right to choose in federal law, expand voting rights, and address climate change. And those reforms need to happen in the Senate and House as opposed to a senator's
houseboat.
This has been A Closer Look. God's Love We Deliver cooks and brings over 2 million meals a year to men, women, and children living with HIV, AIDS, cancer, and other serious illnesses, and they need your help now more than ever. If you're watching this online, you can hit the donate button. Stay safe, get vaccinated. We love you.